On February 2nd, 962 CE, in the Basilica of St. Peter in Rome, a 49-year-old German king knelt before Pope John XII and rose as Emperor of the Romans. In a single ceremony, he revived an imperial title that had been dormant for 38 years since the death of the last Carolingian emperor in 924 CE, claimed the spiritual and political inheritance of Julius Caesar, Augustus, and Charlemagne simultaneously, and founded an institution that would dominate the political architecture of Central Europe for the next 844 years, until Napoleon dissolved it by force in 1806. His name was Otto the First of Saxony. History would call him Otto the Great, and the empire he built in one lifetime began not in Rome, not in a throne room, but in the mind of a boy who grew up watching his father fight for the survival of a kingdom that had no right to exist. Otto was born on November 23, 912 CE, the second son of Henry I of Saxony, the man history would remember as Henry the Fowler, and his second wife, Matilda of Ringelheim, a woman descended from the Saxon chieftain Widukind, who had fought Charlemagne himself for 32 years before submitting to baptism in 785 CE. The kingdom Otto was born into was not a unified nation. It was a loose and permanently hostile confederation of 5 major duchies: Saxony, Bavaria, Franconia, Swabia, and Lotharingia, each governed by a duke who owed the king theoretical loyalty and practical contempt. The German king in 912 CE was not a ruler. He was the most powerful man in a room full of men who believed they deserved his chair. Henry the Fowler had seized the throne in 919 CE, not by hereditary right, but by election among the German dukes, becoming the first king of the Saxon Ottonian dynasty after the Carolingian line collapsed. He was given his nickname not from any military achievement, but because the royal messengers reportedly found him hunting birds with falcons when they arrived to offer him the crown. He accepted it anyway, and spent the next 17 years building the military and political infrastructure that his son would inherit and weaponize. Henry understood that the greatest threat to his fragile kingdom was not the rival dukes inside it, but the Magyar horse archers thundering in from the east. Since 899 CE, Magyar raiding parties had been burning their way across Bavaria, Saxony, Franconia, and into France and Italy, killing thousands, enslaving populations, and extracting tribute payments from rulers too weak and too divided to stop them. Henry negotiated a 9-year truce with the Magyars in 926 CE, paying them tribute in exchange for peace, and used every one of those 9 years to build a cavalry-centered army specifically designed to chase down and destroy fast-moving mounted raiders. In 933 CE, Henry refused to renew the tribute payment. The Magyars invaded. At the Battle of Lechfeld in 933 CE, Henry's reformed cavalry force met the Magyar raiding army and destroyed it, the first decisive German military victory over the Magyar threat in over 3 decades. The victory gave Henry a political authority no German king had possessed since Charlemagne. He used it to force the German dukes to abandon their tradition of electoral succession and accept hereditary primogeniture, meaning the throne would pass to his chosen son by blood rather than by ducal vote. His chosen son was not Otto, his eldest surviving child, but Otto, his second son by his beloved second wife, Matilda, passed over the eldest son, Thankmar, deliberately. Henry died on July 2, 936 CE, leaving Otto a kingdom that was stronger than it had been in a generation and a nobility that was angrier than it had been in 2. On August 7th, 936 CE, Otto was elected and crowned King of Germany at Aachen, the city Charlemagne had made the capital of his empire 140 years earlier. The ceremony was constructed as a deliberate act of historical theater. Otto sat upon Charlemagne's own stone throne. The archbishops of Mainz and Cologne performed the coronation. The 5 great dukes of Germany served as his personal attendants at the coronation feast, a choreographed act of submission designed to demonstrate to every noble in the kingdom that their independence ended where Otto's authority began. He was 23 years old. He had inherited a functional army, a hostile nobility, an external Magyar threat that 9 years of tribute had only temporarily suspended, and a set of ambitions that went considerably beyond anything his father had imagined. The question was not whether those ambitions would produce conflict. The question was how many of that conflict's enemies would be wearing German crowns. In 938 CE, ���ᴘ, Otto's disinherited elder half-brother, raised a rebellion against the king in alliance with Eberhard of Franconia, one of the most powerful dukes in Germany. ���ᴘ seized the fortress of Belecke, captured Otto's younger brother Henry, and held him as a hostage. Otto responded without hesitation, besieged the fortress, and cornered ���ᴘ inside the church of St. Peter at Wörl. ���ᴘ was killed inside the church in 938 CE, stabbed through a window by one of Otto's soldiers while clutching the altar. He was the first of Otto's blood relatives to die in the wars that Otto's own coronation had made inevitable. He would not be the last. Within months of ���ᴘ's death, Otto's younger brother Henry launched his own rebellion, gathering a coalition of discontented German nobles and securing the support of King Louis IV of France and Duke Giselbert of Lotharingia. The rebellion lasted 2 years. In 939 CE, Otto defeated the rebel coalition at the Battle of Andernach, where Giselbert drowned attempting to flee across the Rhine River, and Eberhard of Franconia was killed in the fighting. Henry survived, submitted to his brother, was forgiven. Then in 941, CE organized a conspiracy to assassinate Otto at the Easter celebrations in Quedlinburg. The plot was discovered before it could be carried out. Otto forgave Henry a second time, an act of deliberate political calculation rather than fraternal sentiment, understanding that executing his own brother would permanently destabilize the dynasty's legitimacy. In 947 CE, he rewarded Henry's sustained loyalty with the Duchy of Bavaria, transforming his most dangerous enemy into his most useful ally. The man who had twice tried to destroy him governed Bavaria faithfully until his death in 955 CE. The pattern of Otto's genius was already fully visible by 940 CE. He did not simply defeat his enemies. He absorbed them, reorganized them, and redirected their ambitions into instruments of his own expansion. He applied the same logic to the Catholic Church with a systematic thoroughness that would define medieval European governance for the next 3 centuries. Otto understood that the German dukes derived their power from land, inheritance, and military force, all of which passed automatically to their sons and grandsons beyond the king's control. The Church derived its institutional authority from Rome, its appointments from the crown, and its succession from celibacy, meaning bishops and abbots produced no heirs, and their offices reverted to royal appointment upon their deaths. Otto began systematically installing loyal churchmen as bishops and abbots across Germany, granting them the same territorial authority as secular lords, but retaining permanent control over their succession. By 950 CE, the German Church had become the most sophisticated administrative apparatus in Europe, and every significant appointment within it answered ultimately to Otto. He used that apparatus to push German authority in every direction simultaneously. In the northeast, he crushed a Slavic rebellion in 939 CE and founded a network of new dioceses east of the Elbe River, establishing Magdeburg as a fortified religious and military capital designed to project German power deep into Slavic territory. In the east, a prolonged conflict with Duke Boleslav I of Bohemia that began in 936 CE was finally resolved in 950 CE, when Boleslav was forced to sign a peace treaty resuming tribute payments to the German crown. In the west, Otto intervened decisively in French internal politics, using his military strength to mediate disputes between French nobles and extend German influence into Burgundy without firing a single arrow on French soil. Then, in 951 CE, Otto looked south. Adelaide of Italy, the 19-year-old widowed queen of the Italian kingdom, sent an urgent appeal to Otto from a prison in the fortress of Garda, where she was being held captive by Berengar II of Italy, who had seized the Italian throne and was attempting to force her into marriage with his son. Otto marched an army across the Alps in 951 CE, assumed the title of King of the Lombards, and married Adelaide himself, his first wife Editha, having died in 946 CE. Berengar submitted, paid homage to Otto as his vassal for the Kingdom of Italy in 952 CE, and Otto returned north, having added Italy to his sphere of dominance in a single campaign. He had been forced to withdraw before reaching Rome only because his son Ludolf, resentful of Adelaide's influence and his own diminishing inheritance prospects, launched yet another rebellion in Germany in 953 CE. Ludolf's rebellion drew in Conrad the Red, Duke of Lotharingia, and temporarily fractured the German military coalition Otto had spent 17 years assembling. It collapsed in 954 CE, when a Magyar raiding army of over 50,000 men swept through Bavaria and deep into France as far west as Aquitaine, burning everything in its path and reminding every rebellious German duke with terrifying clarity what the alternative to Otto's unified kingdom actually looked like. Ludolf submitted. Conrad submitted. Otto stood alone at the center of a reunified Germany, with the largest Magyar invasion in living memory scheduled to return the following summer. He had 7,000 to 8,000 men, a reputation that had survived 2 decades of continuous warfare, and exactly one opportunity to end the Magyar threat permanently. He took it. On August 8, 955 CE, a Magyar army estimated at between 50,000 and 100,000 men laid siege to the city of Augsburg on the Lech River in Bavaria. The city's garrison, commanded by Bishop Ulrich of Augsburg, held the walls for a single day before news arrived that Otto was approaching from the northeast with a relief force. The Magyars abandoned the siege and moved to the banks of the Lech River, apparently choosing to make camp and invite a pitched battle rather than retreat. It was the single greatest strategic miscalculation in Magyar military history, and it cost them everything. On August 10, 955 CE, Otto's army of approximately 8,000 heavy cavalry drawn from the contingents of Bavaria, Saxony, Franconia, Swabia, Bohemia, and even the forces of former rebel Duke Conrad the Red, advanced toward the Magyar position in a column of 8 divisions. The Magyars struck first, sending a fast-moving light cavalry force across the river to attack the rear of the German column, routing the Bohemian contingent guarding the baggage train and spreading panic through 2 Swabian divisions. Otto ordered Conrad and his Frankish cavalry out of the column immediately to destroy the now dismounted Magyar looters before they could remount. Conrad's force swept through them in minutes. Otto reformed his entire column into a battle line, ordered a full charge, and the 8,000 German heavy lancers crashed into the Magyar front ranks before the horse archers could loose a second volley of arrows. The lightly armored Magyar cavalry broke within the first engagement. Thousands drowned attempting to cross the Lech River in retreat. Those who reached the far bank were hunted down by local peasants and handed to Otto's pursuing cavalry. The Magyar commanders, including the generals Lel and Bulcsú, were captured, denied the ransom that noble prisoners customarily received, and hanged. The Battle of Lechfeld on August 10th, 955 CE, ended Magyar raiding into Western Europe permanently. Within 45 years, the Magyars had converted to Christianity, and on December 25th, 1000 CE, Pope Sylvester II crowned Stephen I as the first Christian king of Hungary, the direct institutional consequence of Otto's victory on the Lech. Otto returned to Germany carrying a military reputation that no living ruler in Europe could match or challenge. On February 2nd, 962 CE, Pope John XII crowned Otto the First Emperor of the Romans in St. Peter's Basilica, fulfilling the imperial ambition that Charlemagne had last held 162 years earlier. The ceremony produced a treaty between the papacy and the imperial throne that regulated their relationship for generations, established the German king as the permanent protector of the Roman Church, and created the institutional framework that would become the Holy Roman Empire, a political structure that survived in various forms for 844 years, until Napoleon abolished it on August 6, 1806. Otto spent his final decade asserting imperial authority across Italy, advancing into Byzantine-held southern Italy, installing and deposing popes, and arranging the marriage of his son Otto II to the Byzantine princess 𝙎ᴜᴜ in 972 CE, connecting the Ottonian dynasty directly to the Eastern imperial tradition. He returned to Germany in 973 CE and died at Memleben on May 7, 973 CE, at the age of 60, having been king for 37 years and emperor for 11. He had inherited a kingdom of 5 quarreling duchies, held together by tribute payments and fear. He left behind an empire that stretched from the North Sea to Rome, from the Rhine to the Oder, governed by a church he had restructured, defended by a military he had rebuilt, and anchored by an imperial title he had resurrected from 38 years of absence. The genius and the ruthlessness were the same quality. Expressed in different rooms, he forgave his brother twice and hanged Magyar generals rather than ransom them. He built hospitals and monasteries and executed rebels inside churches. He made the papacy an instrument of German imperial power, and then watched the papacy spend the next 300 years trying to reverse that arrangement. Otto the Great did not build the Holy Roman Empire because he was a good man. He built it because he was a precise one. And in the 10th century, precision was the only thing that stood between civilization and the burning horizon that the Magyars left behind them everywhere they rode.